my name is Sean. I know most people here know me. I'm in North Carolina. I, for some reason, love to know where people are. So I'm located in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I think there's a few other people here in this state. And this is a part of a Grit True Stories That Matter. Excuse me. We do events like this and a handful of others. I will plug them a little bit later. A recently launched podcast. Yes, I will put a link into the chat for that as well. We just launched our first episode with did that with Kurt Mullen, who I think is here, and we are proud of that. Soon to be launched workshops, and as always, since this began in March, a community that we've been building, and I feel blessed to be a part of it. So again, this is being streamed live to Facebook. So if that's not your thing, make sure you turn your video off. I encourage you to keep it on. I think it helps the storytellers when they can see their audience in this tricky space of Zoom. We're all doing the best we can to figure this out. And a couple other things you can do is probably on the top right part of your screen, you can change it to either speaker or gallery view. So you either get to see the whole screen and the one teller or a lot of different boxes. So I'll give you a little bit of time right now if you want to play with that and see which one you prefer. Everybody's muted. The only person who will be unmuted will be the teller. I don't love this, but it's the best way I've found to do it thus far to minimize any potential distractions. And the only other Zoom related thing I want you to know about is use the chat. There's a little chat icon. And if you click that, like many of you did when you were sharing where you're from or where are you. Sheila is in New York City, by the way. Hi, Sheila. I hope I'm saying your name right. And you can send a message to everybody, or you can send a chat message to one person. So if you want to share something, especially with to a teller who just shared a story, that's probably the best option. Again, you can also wait until after the show and the 7 tellers tell their stories, and we'll have a Q&A. So that's that. This is a pay what you can or what you want. I will put the link to, I have PayPal and Venmo, and there is zero pressure. Any money is going towards these 2 podcasts. One is called Grit, True Stories That Matter. And the other one is called Suicide Noted. It's a podcast I've been producing for a few months, in which I talk to suicide attempt survivors. They're not super expensive, but they do cost some money. And so this is part of that. And I appreciate anything you want. And again, if you'd prefer just to watch and not contribute, that is totally fine. I want you to hear these stories. Okay. Links to come. Before I introduce our first storyteller, again, I want to thank you. And I want to share that I think all stories matter. You wouldn't be here if you didn't like or appreciate storytelling. I don't know if it's fair to say that some stories matter more. What I will say is these stories about these things certainly matter. And I think when you are willing to go there with the teller and sit in that space, sometimes it's a little uncomfortable. And I know we don't always talk about this stuff. I think that's where beauty hides often. I know that might sound a little corny, but it's my belief. I also believe it saves lives. If it doesn't save a life, it might help someone feel a little bit more connected or a little less alone. And that's why I do this. And I want to thank you for being here and being part of that. So let me introduce our first storyteller this evening. She is a longtime fan of The Moth, as many of us are, and NPR radio. She started Story City Troop 5 years ago. It's still going now. And now she lives in Connecticut. I think that's online now, but beforehand it was a live show in Connecticut. She has written and performed a one-woman show called The Way Out on her recovery from childhood sexual abuse. And her story that she's sharing with all of us this evening comes from that one-woman show. So please welcome Sue Huggans. Sue, let me find you so I can spotlight you. Where are you, Sue? There you are. Everybody else should be muted. Sue, you are unmuted. Take your time. Break a leg.
It's January 1989. I'm 47 years old, and I have just arrived in Florida at Sunhaven, which is a 30-day treatment center for alcoholics and adult children of alcoholics. I don't drink, but both of my parents were alcoholics, and I'm a wreck. I'm depressed. I'm lonely. I'm mad. I'm so many emotions. Mostly, I'm ashamed about the job I just lost. If I'd only trusted my judgment and stood up for myself, I might still be in that job. I'm checking myself into Sunhaven because otherwise I know I'd crack up. I arrived Saturday late afternoon, and I am introduced to Lizzie, a 16-year-old girl who's going to be my roommate. Lizzie takes me around, introduces me to everybody, shows me the different rooms in the unit, and makes sure to tell me all the rules. Lizzie tells me that I am her third roommate in 2 weeks because the other two had to leave for breaking rules. I laugh, I say, you don't have to worry about me. I am the good girl. I just tell me what the rules are and I'll obey. After supper, we all meet in the big meeting room, the 30 of us, with Kit, who is the night counselor. I walk in with a cup of tea and Kit immediately tells me no drinks are allowed in the meeting. So I quick get rid of that. Then she starts the meeting with a chant that she just loves. It's her favorite chant, and she has everybody say, no fuck or shit except for Kit. Okay, a little strange. The next day, Sunday, there's no therapy. Therapists don't work. So they take us on a field trip to a touristy mall and an art museum. That evening, we're back with Kit in the meeting room. I walk in, take my seat near Kit, and I see that she's looking at me kind of oddly. And after a while, she says to me, Susan, what did I tell you about bringing drinks into the room? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, excuse me. I go to get up, get rid of the cup, and she says, sit back down. Put the cup on the floor. You forgot? I doubt that. I think you brought that cup into the room just to show me that I'm not the boss. Isn't that right? No, I'm sorry, I don't do that. I doubt that. You don't like rules, do you? I don't have any problem with rules. That's a lie. What about last night? You read magazines in your room against the rules. Well, yeah, the night nurse said I could read them last night, but then I would have to put them away for the rest of the time. That's a lie. Lizzie said you were told to put those books away immediately. No, that's not true. Still lying. We can't help you if you won't own up to your fatal flaws. Group, I want each one of you to tell Sue what you think about her. Jerry, we'll start with you. I immediately fall into the numb, which is a tool I learned as an incest survivor. I freeze all of my feelings and I wipe all emotion off my face. And I step back inside and I watch and try to figure out what I can do to make myself safe. They start one by one telling me either things that Kit has already said or things like preaching to me that I'll be safe if I will only admit to my flaws. This is awful. This is embarrassing. This is frightening. This is abuse. I know that. But I also notice every single one of them has this look on their face, almost apologetic. They're like in a haze. And I realize they're afraid of Kit. They're afraid of what she'll do to them if they don't say what she wants to hear. And I know something else. This is how Lizzie gets rid of her roommates. Well, I give them no response. I stay in the numb. When every single one of them is spoken, Kit just goes on with the meeting. And for the rest of the meeting and the rest of that night, I am going round and round in my head. I think that was abuse. I think I should leave. But maybe I should have, I need to know what they've said to me. Maybe I'm all wrong and I need to stay here. It just drives me crazy. But by the morning, I decide, okay, that was abuse. I should leave. But I don't trust my own judgment still. I want one other human being to agree with me. So I go to the nurse and I ask if I can speak to the psychiatrist. And she says, I don't think she'll see you, but I'll ask. Okay, I'll wait in my room. When I get to my room, I get down on my knees and I start praying, dear God, I am so confused. I don't know if I'm right and this is abuse and I should leave, or maybe I should stay because I needed to hear those things. I need another human being to agree with me. Please make the psychiatrist see me. And then I get a strong but gentle thought in my brain. I know it's not coming from my mind. I know it's a message. I get messages sometimes when I'm praying. And this message is, you don't need one other person to agree with you. You know you're right, and you should leave. I jump up and I run to the nurse's station, and she's waiting for me. And she says, the psychiatrist won't see you. And I say, that's okay. I've decided I'm leaving. You better not. You'll try to, I want to come back later. We won't let you back in. That's okay. I won't be back. I sail back down to my room, pack and leave. That was the day that I started to truly trust my own judgment and stand up for myself. Sunhaven had to close its doors sometime in the next 2 years because of all the lawsuits they had over how they treated their patients. I learned and grew from the behavior, the nasty behavior that they gave me. And I'm happy. They're closed. I hope Kit has learned a lesson too. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Stay unmuted for a sec. I have a question or two, yeah?
Okay.
First of all, thank you for sharing that. It's very powerful. And that's part of the way out, right?
Yes.
That's part of. Can you share a little bit about what that one person show is about and how people can learn more about it if they're interested?
Well, I didn't discover, why is my screen doing this?
We can now. You just look a little more blue, but we can see and hear you okay.
I can't see anything. Okay, I don't know why my screen is doing that to me, but anyway, I didn't discover until I was 45 years old that my father had molested me. It was all repressed memories that started pouring back in. And so in the show, in the first half, I'm really letting you know all of the symptoms that I had as a result of that abuse. And then in the middle of the show, I recognized that I was abused by my father. And then the rest of the show is the therapy that I went through to help me recover. And it's not gruesome or unbearable to watch. And I do have a lot of humor in it too. I, I had actually performed a script reading of it, a reading of the play. Um, I haven't done any more performances, and with COVID-19, I don't know when I'll be able to. So I'm writing a book to go with it in the meantime.
Hmm.
And if you go to my website, which
Mm-hmm. Yep.
thewayoutstory.com,
And that, and I
thewayoutstory.com.
too, I put that link in the chat for people.
Thank you.
Sure, my pleasure. So if they go to that website, maybe not right now because we have a second teller coming soon, and I don't want to overwhelm the audience with links, but I do want people to know how to find it. So it's the way
Outstory.com.
outstory.com. I put that in the link, excuse me, in the chat, and they can learn more. So, and
Thank you.
afterwards, I'm curious, well, if you could stick around for the Q&A, I also then want to hear a little bit more about Story City Troop, okay? So
Oh,
stick
okay.
around.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you again, Sue. That was a wonderful story and a great way to start the evening off. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah,
I'm glad. I appreciate what you're doing.
my pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks. Hey, so let me introduce our second storyteller. This is a very brief introduction. He's a clinical social worker in the Boston area. That's all you're getting from this man this evening. Until now, when you hear his story, please welcome our second storyteller of the evening, Michael Glenn.
In September of 1959, I was 11 years old and in the 7th grade, but I didn't go to school. I was diagnosed with a severe anxiety disorder that manifested itself in separation anxiety, and I had difficulty leaving the house. So at the beginning of 7th grade, I feigned sickness, and for the first few days was able to stay home from school by tricking my parents into believing I was ill. That stopped working, and they started sending me to school, and the mornings would be miserable. There'd be arguments, I'd be crying, yelling, and in the end, I would have to go to school. I would get to school, go to homeroom. I was in the 7th grade, and then after homeroom, I'd leave. I'd run away. I would do this pretty much every day for the first 2 weeks of school. The principal would call my mom. She would come looking for me. We lived in a small town, so she would drive around and find me and pick me up and take me home. And next morning, same thing. They'd argue in the morning. We'd all argue in the morning, and they'd send me to school, and I would run away. And one time I got picked up by the police instead of by my mother. I was down by the river. I got picked up by a cruiser and taken home. And the police suspected that I was suicidal, told my parents that they suspected that I was suicidal, which was probably the best thing that could have happened. At that point, some things really changed. For one thing, I didn't have to go to school anymore. I was tutored at home, 2 hours a day. Mrs. Kimball. Mrs. Kimball was what I thought was about a 90-year-old 8th grade English teacher. She was probably about 50 in reality, but she seemed ancient. Everybody was scared to death of her. She had a little bit of Parkinson's disease, so her hand trembled. Everybody was dreaded getting Mrs. Kimball in 8th grade. But I got Mrs. Kimball alone in my kitchen every day for 2 hours. And I got to know this woman like nobody else did, no other students certainly. And I loved her. She was a wonderful woman. And she taught me grammar like I never could have learned otherwise. I talk good, don't I? So anyway, the other good thing that happened as a result of the suicidal suspicion was that I was put into therapy finally with Dr. Morris Laitman, PhD. Uh, and he became a real pillar of my life. I started seeing him twice a week in 7th grade. Just to give you an example of how important he was to me, Sunday nights were the worst for me. Sunday nights, I would be miserable, anticipating going to school the next day. I would have difficulty sleeping. I'd be crying. Dr. Laitman allowed me to call him on Sunday nights. And I mean, not just one or two Sunday nights. I called him almost all the time. I called him almost all the time in 7th grade. His wife would answer. I'd call him around 10 or 11 o'clock on Sunday night, and his wife would answer. Her name was Belle Laitman. Got to the point where Belle and I were on a first name basis. She said, "Don't call me Mrs. Laitman. Call me Belle. You're Michael, I'm Belle." So I'd call. Belle would hear my voice. I didn't even have to tell her who I was. She said, "Hold on, Michael, I'll get Morris." She didn't even call him Dr. Laitman. She called him Morris. That's how intimate it had become. So in any case, I continued through seventh grade. I was miserable. At the end of seventh grade, my parents, who were totally confused by my state of mind, my father was a Buick dealer. You know, his emotional intelligence was about as low as it can go. At the end of seventh grade, school phobic, unable to leave the house, my parents decided to send me away for 8 weeks of sleepaway camp, which I think was really their way of getting me out of their hair. I think they were really, it was very difficult for them to not know how to handle this, not know how to handle me. And they sent me to camp, 8 weeks of sleepaway camp in Ocala, Florida. So I got on a plane in Newark Airport by myself. Now I was 12, but I was still pretty phobic, still pretty anxious. Got on a plane by myself with a little tag saying Camp Ocala, flew to Miami Beach, got on a train because Ocala, Florida is not like what a lot of people think of in Florida. It's not Miami Beach or Tampa. It's Central Florida. It's 3 hours north of Miami Beach. So I take a train for 3 hours north into pretty primitive country, and you know, real rural South. And I arrive at this camp, Camp Ocala. I knew immediately that I was not going to work out at Camp Ocala. It was primitive, it was in the middle of nowhere. I knew nobody. There were alligators in the lake where kids swim. I mean, it was just, I knew it wasn't for me. The first night I ran away. I was gone for about an hour and they picked me up, brought me back, lectured me about the Ku Klux Klan, liking little Jewish boys just as much as they like little black boys. They like to hang you guys. And if you run away, they're pretty active around here. They scared me. But the second night I ran away again. And I got pretty far this time. I was gone for about 4 or 5 hours. And this time they brought me back and they took me, instead of to the cabin, they took me to the infirmary and they lectured me about the Ku Klux Klan and they told me no more phone calls home. I couldn't use a phone. And they even injected me with something to make me sleep. And for the next few days, I slept every night in the infirmary under the influence of whatever it was that they gave me to sleep. I felt like a prisoner. And I realized running away wasn't going to work. And I just had to do something. But one night at dinner, I was able to leave the dining hall and make my way to the camp director's office, where I assumed there would be a telephone, and there was. I knew I had time to make pretty much one phone call, and I wasn't sure who to call, but I made a call. And when I heard the voice on the other end, I knew I'd made the right decision. I knew I'd made the right call. And who do you think was on the other end? It was Belle. She said, "Hold on a minute, I'll get Dr. Laitman for you." He was Dr. Laitman now, and I was home within 2 days. That's my story. Thank you.
Michael, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate that story. I also appreciate how I find all of you. I found you, I don't know if that's the best way to frame it, through Kurt. You took his story class, right? His story crafting or storytelling class. Kurt's my partner with the podcast.
Took it twice.
Oh, you took it twice, and it shows. And so beautiful to, yeah, it shows. Enough.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. I have two questions. One, what's your beef with Buick dealers, really?
What's my beef?
Yeah, Buick dealers can have some emotional.
Funny you say that. That's what
I mean, what's wrong with a Buick dealer having some emotional intelligence? Just maybe wasn't what it was.
This was a Buick dealer back in the 50s and 60s. Okay. It was a little different back then.
Different time. So are we to assume that people who became dealership salespeople didn't have emotional intelligence, or once they began there, it sucked the emotional intelligence out of them?
My experience with salespeople who were involved in the automobile industry was that most of them bordered, or if not, were full-fledged sociopaths.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a group of people who are very exploitive, dishonest, insincere. Really, at a feeling level, there was really very little. It was quite an upbringing. My next story is about that.
I'm looking forward to that. And if you can stick around for the Q&A, I am curious to learn a little bit more about that, with this story and the experience you went through, and how it may have that experience, and I'm sure others may have informed your career choice.
Well, let me just say in response to that very quickly, that for 28 years, I was a school psychologist in a middle school in Wellesley, Massachusetts.
Mhm.
working with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So I
Right.
didn't go to school in 7th grade, but I worked for 28 years with 7th graders in the 7th grade school. So I
Might
did
not be might not be a coincidence.
right now.
All right. Thanks again, Michael. Great job. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me introduce our third storyteller this evening. And a reminder, after our fourth storyteller, we'll have a brief intermission. And again, I appreciate the fact that you're in the chat, which I know we're limited with the way we can communicate right now. Typically, you'd be clapping and there would be a sort of different dynamic. But for now, those of you who are hearing these stories and want to share something with the storytellers, thank you for sharing that in the chat. So let us move on. Our third storyteller this evening, he is in Chicago and he focuses on something called embodied storytelling. I'm going to ask him about this. I'm curious. He works for storyluck.org, and we'll put that link in the chat in a bit, and has been lucky to produce shows all over the Midwest, including A Month of, Story Luck, and Journey to the End of Night. And finally, he hosts the podcast. This is a great name, by the way, Tertiary Delight, an exploration on best friendships. Good name. Please welcome Daniel Andrew Boyd. Daniel, where are you? Let me spotlight you, fine sir. Unmute yourself, spotlight, break a leg, sir.
So hello everyone. Thank you so much for showing up. I saw some familiar faces in there. Little Zoom hello to you. In a power pose, and we can go into it. When I was a little kid, I'd moved to Ohio, and it bummed me out because Ohio, small town Ohio, is a shithole. And that was my feeling, and I was mad about it. And so one day I just slammed my door to make me feel better in my bedroom, and that didn't work. So I threw my fist through the wall. That didn't work, and it made me feel stupid. And I thought, I should leave that there to remind me that you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. And every day I'd get up, I'd be naked, and I'd be like, look at the hole in the wall. Violence just brings destruction. Don't do that shit. That worked for a pretty long time. But depression being what it is, and I still was sad. Sad about nothing. That's the way it works for me. It's just the nondescript, indiscriminate malaise of bullshit and injustice. It just seeps into me, and it's this low level throbbing sadness. I'm sad for days, I'm sad for years, and finally I end up on the kitchen floor. I'm like 16, and I've pulled out a knife, and I've got it, and I just want that pain to stop. And I know once I cut my throat, I'll be upset, but nobody will catch me, and I'll die. And so I'm standing there, and I've got it to my neck, and I'm like, do it, do it. And I'm holding it for about 5 minutes, and I realize that I just don't have it in me. And so I flip it around, because if I can't kill myself, I'll maim myself. And I go for my gut, and just inflexively, I dodge it. Now I'm so mad at my fucking cowardice that I tossed it away, and I get up, and I'm just flush red with embarrassment. The first thing I see as I'm coming out of that is a glass cookie jar that reminds me of back home in Michigan, the place where, for me, life made sense, justice was real, love won out in the end. And I have this very specific image that pops into my head of being a little kid, and my mom has got me propped with a friend of mine on this hill, and there's daisies, and she's trying to take this picture like I'm a Cabbage Patch Kid in a Polaroid camera, and she gets it just right so that me and my friend were like Daisy Patch Kids. But that's the opposite of what I want to feel in that moment. I'm just like so fucking pissed. Like I want the opposite. And so I smash it. And the glass breaks against the wall and it crumbles onto my hand and it ricochets everywhere up my arm, into my belly, across my face. I hear it ting, 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 ting. And it's an infinite number of shards of fucking shame. But my fist is unscathed until I relax. And then hundreds of little micro cuts open up and my hand starts to weep in blood. And I grab it and I take it to the sink and I wash it off. And I think, this is the dumbest thing I will ever do in my entire life. I am a fucking idiot. I will never do anything like this again. And that's basically true for like 20 years. So flash forward 20 years, it doesn't matter how I got into this situation. What matters is that I'm there and that I'm doing it. There's reasons, but there's not a justification. There's reasons, but there's not an excuse. So I'm beating up this kid and I've grabbed him and I've pulled him into the street and I've placed his head between the car and the pavement below. He's a little bit younger than me. And I take him and I smash his head up into the bumper and then I smash it back down into the concrete. And when he goes up into the bumper, it just automatically ricochets down into the granite. So up and down, but the down is always twice. And I do that to him 3 times. And then I take my right hand and I wrap it around his neck. And then I take my left hand and through gritted teeth, I tell him, you're going to fucking die. You're going to die tonight. Because you don't do that to people. And he's not resisting, and his face turns blue when a hand of the woman I came with touches me, and it knocks me out of it. And I say, huh? And she says, you're being toxic, stop. He's drunk. He's so drunk. He's blackout drunk. He's not going to remember any of this. There's no lesson. He won't remember why he got those bruises. So I stand up and I call the police, and it's Chicago, so they don't come. He wakes up, catches his breath, and stumbles off into the winter night. It doesn't matter that there were people around who were saying things like, he got what he deserved, or that she wrote it off as like, bullshit, toxic masculinity. Because I'm left thinking about that hole in the wall, thinking about my red right hand, and the fact that I don't have it in me to kill myself. But I could do worse. Thank you so much for listening to me today.
Boom. Great job, Dan. Thanks, man. Did you say shards of shame? I don't know if you can hear me okay, Dan. So I don't know if you can you hear me okay? Nope. Can't hear you, whatever you did. So I don't know if you're just lipping that. Anyway, I wanted to thank you. If you can unmute yourself for a sec or whatever is happening, I wanted to ask you. Yep. Did you say shards of shame? Because if that's what you,
Yeah.
all right, I'm going to formally tell you or ask you to use that. I won't say it's mine. I'll say it's yours, but I will probably be using that in something that I create. That's a beautiful expression, man, and a great story. Thanks. Yeah, I don't know if you're having
Thank
some
you so
tech.
much.
Yeah, so I think you're having some tech glitches, but I want to ask you about story luck and tertiary delight. You want to stick around for the Q&A? Is that cool? Awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Really appreciate it. All right, so what we're gonna do, thanks again, Dan and Michael and Sue, check out the chat. People are giving you some love. It's the best we can do in a Zoom world. I want to introduce I just said look how I take ownership of these people. That's kind of weird. Our fourth storyteller this evening. And then again, we're going to take a little break. So you can relieve yourselves or get another drink, or I'm going to put the link in if you want to contribute. And I'd encourage that if you feel like there's value here. Up to you. Our fourth storyteller this evening, she is from Detroit, Michigan, so I would not screw with her. Formerly trained dancer for 15 years, a writer, a music lover. She suffers from chronic invisible illness as well as mental illness, and she speaks openly about both, hoping one day to end the stigma. So please welcome, live from Detroit, Michigan, it's Cheri Lynn. Break a leg, Cheri.
Thank you, Sean. Hello, everyone. Oh, well, this is 2018. It's a beautiful autumn day. Sun is shining. Colors are at their peak. A stark contrast to what is going on inside my house. I've been depressed and in terrible chronic pain on the couch for about 4 weeks now. I've not showered, been in the same PJs for the duration. Just a mess. I don't care about anything, least of all myself. My suicidal thoughts are growing louder and louder every day. Loser. No one cares. You're a burden. Go be with your mom. She's waiting. On and on and on, just hammering away at me. I just want it to stop. So I decide to go check myself in to the psych floor at the hospital. I start to pack a bag. No strings, no shoelaces, no pins, no tweezers, nothing you can harm yourself with. Well, next thing I know, I wake up, sick to my stomach, looking around. There's a strange lady asleep in a chair across from me. I'm in the hospital. Somewhere between packing a bag and my best friend coming to pick me up, I downed a bottle of Xanax. Now, mind you, I had no conscious plan to kill myself. So you can imagine how confused I am. I have literally no recollection of taking the pills, of EMS coming, of whatever treatment they had to give me so that the Xanax didn't hurt me. I mean, nothing. The not knowing is really bothering me now. I try to ask, but no one gives me any answers. I'm freaking out. So I asked to go to the psych floor because I just want to feel better. A couple days I start to feel better finally, physically. So I get up and go down for breakfast. We get 3 meals a day, a snack at night. Our days are pretty full with various group therapies like talk therapy. You've probably seen this in any movie or TV show dealing with mental illness or addiction, in a big circle. We also have crafts, art, which is my favorite, one-on-one therapy, then social worker and psychiatry meetings. The same thing pretty much every day. Every so often they throw something in like Tai Chi instead of like a psychotherapy appointment or one-on-ones. People are pretty friendly. Seems like a nice cohesive group. And after dinner, it's pretty much free time until bed. It's during the free time that a problem starts. Partially because the suicidal thoughts grow louder the quieter it is. But part of the issue is also that people feel the need to tell me their life story and ask my advice. Normally, I enjoy helping, but not this time, not here. Sadly, this is my third stay in 4 years. I end up blowing up at everyone, telling them, just leave me alone. I run into the quiet room, slam the door, and excuse me, and start to just bawl my eyes out. After a while, I just get out, go get my sleeping meds, and go straight to bed. I feel terrible for yelling at everybody because that's really not my nature. But I really need to help myself right now. These damn thoughts are still hammering away. The next day, I meet with my care team. They say they're going to work with my insurance so that I can stay through the weekend, go right into an outpatient day program. This would be something new for me. There's a plan, so I feel a bit better. But I still feel suicidal, so much so that I am afraid to go home. Friday, I wake up. I go down for breakfast when my social worker comes to get me. We go to her office, and she says 4 words I'm not ready to hear. So you're going home today? I look at her and I said, that's not what I was told. As I'm shaking like a leaf and starting to have chest pain. She looks confused, but tells me, just try to calm down, go to your room, lie down, just try to relax while I sort it out. Excuse me. Sorry about that. A while later, the doctor comes in to explain my insurance is the problem. They have to send me home, but not until a little bit later after dinner. So I go back to my therapy. My art therapist has worry written all over her face when I tell her what's up. She says to me, are you ready to go home? I said, no, but apparently insurance overrides the doctor's. She holds my hands tight and tells me, when you go home, go right to your bedroom, love on your fur babies, journal, color, take any meds that are due, and get a good night's sleep. Then do the same until Monday morning. The best advice I've gotten from anyone on my care team this day. So a little later, Dad comes and takes me home, where I have little to no support. I mean, he's an 83-year-old Southern man, really not equipped to handle my depression and suicidal issues, but he tries his best, and he really is the best dad. So the weekend goes by without any incidents as I take my art therapist's advice and stay in my room with my babies, journal all my thoughts, and sleep a lot. So Monday morning, my ride comes. I'm a bit anxious, but I check into the facility and they show me to the group therapy room. The place is pretty bland. Kind of reminds me of like a health department, white and tan, but with comfy couches and chairs. There's 2 young girls running the group. One is a therapist and the other is doing her clinicals. Anyway, we go around the room, introduce ourselves, then we have to say something interesting about ourselves. I say, hi, my name is Cheri, and I love a band called BTS. Yeah. After that, they start by giving us some activity sheets to fill out, and then discuss. I'm a bit nervous, but I've never been shy. So if I'm interested in the subject matter, I engage completely. I'm engaged from the first activity. So I feel like I'm the only one really participating, you know? I'm the one raising my hand, wanting to talk, answer questions, whatnot. But I feel like I'm kind of hogging the floor at this point. So I just sit there because what am I supposed to? I'm like, I want to answer, but then again, I don't want to seem like a know-it-all, right? I have a little bit of psychology background as I did. I took classes in college and then also a lot of self-study, you know, trying to figure out my own issues and find a cure. But just those activities help me so much. But those damn thoughts are still there, just hammering away when I go home. So I see the psychiatrist the next day, and she puts me on low dose lithium. Apparently, they've had a lot of success with suicidal ideation and low dose lithium. So I'm all for it. I'm like, I'll try anything at this point, right? Because I just want to get better. So that's new on our plan. So I'm there about 2.5 weeks. And, you know, like I said, we do a lot of the activities and we just, you know, write out what we're feeling or whatnot. And then we share. And just that alone, the intelligent conversation has me feeling so much better that, you know, I'm engaging and I'm learning new things. So, you know, it makes a difference. Because let me tell you, my first attempt after my mom passed away, I was open about it, open and honest. And I don't regret it, but between having mental illness and having chronic pain issues where I have to have a walker sometimes or a cane all the time, and you know, mobility is an issue. All of a sudden, I'm alone a lot, like a lot. So it's like, it is what it is. My best friend, she's always there for me. And I have a couple other friends that check in here and there. But, you know, the worst thing for people with mental illness, for the most part, and what I find when I speak with other people, the worst thing for us is to be left alone with our thoughts. But it is what it is. What are we going to do, right? But the solution for my suicidal ideation is to keep my brain engaged, whether it be writing, I do that a lot, learning something new, like storytelling, you know, just keeping active, keeping my mind active, playing stupid games that are mind games, you know, where you have to find the word in so many seconds and whatnot. Anyway, that's all boring. So my point is, you never know when or where your help is going to come from. I've been pretty much strong since for the 2 years. With the exception, I mean, my dad died last year, and that was a big blow. And then I was really, really sick in December, and then the pandemic. So you take a lonely person and make them lonelier. But you know what? I'm here. And I've had little to no suicidal thoughts for the most part. So seek help when you can. Boom.
Thank you, Cheri. Great job, Cheri.
I'm sorry.
Did great job. Thank you
Thank
for sharing that. And Kurt, yes,
What?
got a couple people saying boom. That's the thing around in these parts with the boom boom. Thank you for sharing that story. That is not a story that many people would share. But I know you, and I know that you are somebody who will share these stories,
Right.
even if they're uncomfortable for you or others to share them.
Correct.
Before we transition into our intermission, which let me just be real clear, it's not really an intermission. I'm just going to plug a lot of things. Can you share with everybody your role in the Facebook group and how we connected?
Sure. Yeah. I help run a Facebook group. It's called Life After Attempting Suicide, a support group. I have a link I can put in
Yeah,
the,
yeah, we'll add a link for sure. Yeah.
I'll add a link. But yeah, so I try to help people who are either in the same position that I was or am, because it's a recovery. You're always in recovery.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But so I help people. I try to. It's been, I don't know, I think, since 2015, late 2015, that I started helping on the page. So I feel blessed to be able to do that. It makes me feel better to help people. I just feel that's my purpose in life, is to help people somehow. So that's how Sean found me. He put a thing on about his Suicide Noted podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and I agreed to do it.
You did. You were one of my first people that I talked to.
Mhm.
So, and then we've connected since.
Yes,
And it should be noted, you have a large group in that I think it's more than 1,000 people. I don't know how active they are.
it is.
It's a big group, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's gotten a lot. It had gotten a lot bigger over the last year, since the pandemic, especially.
Right.
Right.
And even though and I've done some research on this because it is not, I have a podcast. It's not about me, but the podcast is where I talk with people who have tried to end their lives.
Right.
I've had 27 episodes. You were one of them.
Hmm.
Your group is over 1,000, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and it just should be noted that there are millions
Yes.
worldwide.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I have a hard time finding people to come on my podcast. Now, is it possible that they think I'm scary or think my baldness is, yeah, that's possible.
No.
But more than likely, most people, the great majority, simply will not talk about it.
Right.
So kudos to you for talking about it and creating a space for people to talk about it and then sharing your story. So, and put the link in there because I'm pretty sure even with 23 people, there's a few people that may not share it, but may need it.
Right.
And
I
maybe
got
it's an anonymous thing for them. Put it in there.
Well, like I told you, if I help even just one person,
Yeah.
I've done my job, so to speak.
Yeah. So thanks for that work and thanks for the story because I know you worked hard on it. So cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks
All right.
for the help you gave me too.
My pleasure. My pleasure. We're going to roll into a 5-minute intermission. So now is a great time. Let me remove Cheri's. Now is a great time to use the bathroom. You may have been doing that during the show anyway. That's fine. But you can do that. You can refresh your drink. You can get some food. You can take the dog out for a quick walk. A couple people are putting links into the chat. I want to share a few things that are going on in my world with the story world. And if you want to support, I would appreciate it. Up to you. I'm going to put in the chat 2 links. One is to Venmo and one is to PayPal. If you want to contribute anything, I promise you I'm not getting rich here. It goes to, among other things, the podcast productions of Suicide Noted, which has been going very well. It remains a challenging podcast to get guests for, but those guests that I've had, and it's been over 3 months now, and we were doing it twice a week. Now it's once a week. We get people, and they share, and it's powerful. So if you are into podcasts on Spotify or Apple, if you just put into the search Suicide Noted, Noted, you'll find it. The other podcast is called Grit, True Stories That Matter. I'm doing that with Kurt. Kurt's here this evening. I'm going to put a link to that specific podcast. We dropped our first episode earlier this week. I don't think Julie's here. Julie was our feature teller. Kurt and I talk about the art and craft of storytelling. We focus on one particular component of storytelling. We geek out and answer a question. Our first episode was about, is storytelling a hobby? If you listen to the episode, you will learn very quickly how we feel, especially Kurt. It is real clear how Kurt feels about story crafting and telling and its connection or lack thereof to hobby. So I have put in the chat to everybody PayPal and Venmo, in addition to a link to the podcast. I don't want to overwhelm you with information or links. The only other thing I'll put in the chat is a link at some point to the group, a Facebook group. And the reason why I want to put that in there is that's where our events are. Events like tonight. Now, you found us, you probably know this already, but a monthly 7x7 in which 7 storytellers share stories, typically around 7 minutes. I apparently love the number 7. And next, so there's a few other events. Tonight, Sunday. This Tuesday, we have something called Story Flash. That's a little bit of story, a little bit of improv, and a whole lot of courage. And it's fun. And there are some people who are here this evening who have been there, and it's a really fun way to share true stories in a sort of lighter way. Next Sunday, a week from today, is our 99-second story slam grand slam. Does that make sense? I think it does. Grand finale, call it what you will. A total of 18 storytellers who have paid their dues and advanced will share a 99-second story, and we will, by the end of the evening, have one champion. That is a fun event. It's quick, it's fun, and the 99-second story format is a really interesting way to get to the real bare bones and core of a story really quickly. And finally, on Sundays, every third or fourth week, we have something called, it's relatively new, called the Mental Health Happy-ish Hour. I'm from New York, so ish is a common suffix we enjoy using. And if you got a story centered on mental health and you get to define mental health however you want to, that's a fun, safe, supportive environment to share some stories around that. So I've been babbling. I will encourage you to contribute this evening if you want to. No pressure. Nobody knows either way. I'm going to shut up for a couple minutes, let you refresh your drink or relieve your bladder. And we'll come back and we will introduce our 5th storyteller. So then thanks again, everyone, for being here. Appreciate it. Sufian, you're on deck, but we'll give it let's say 2 minutes. I know you are ready in DC. All right. So thank you, everyone, for sharing what you did in the chat. And storytellers, please read the chat, because I know you're home and you might be alone in front of this computer or phone, and it feels a little weird to share something, the kinds of things you're sharing, and then you're like, it's weird. So read the chat if it helps you. A lot of love coming through that way. Hey, thanks, Dan. Dan showing some love. I appreciate it. All right. And if anybody has any comments for us, for me, for the tellers, you want to put it in there, do that. I want to check in with you. I'm not a therapist or a counselor. I'm not suggesting I am. Just want to check in, see if you're doing okay. Some of the stuff is pretty heavy or raw or sometimes hard to hear. So, yeah. All right, I'm going to roll through. What I'm doing right now is looking at all of you, seeing what you're doing, so I can gauge whether or not we should start our second half. I see some blank spaces. Maybe people are out walking their dog or going to the bathroom. I see some blank screens. They haven't I don't have any video. Jamie Barker, for example, he's just patiently waiting for the next story to begin, right? Sheila is a blank room. We don't know where she is. We can get there. She is. She's coming back into view. She's ready for Sufian, our fifth storyteller. Kate, I don't see. Andrew, I do see. Did they get in a fight? We don't know. Probably not. They're really good together, but even good couples get into fights once in a while. And there's Mary Jo doing what Mary Jo does. So, all right, enough of this babbling. Let's go on. So let me introduce our fifth of 7 storytellers, and I want to remind you, please, that we have a Q&A afterwards. So if you want to stick around, you can stick around. They're usually fun. You can talk to the storytellers about their stories or anything else you might have a question about. Our fifth storyteller this evening, award-winning author and performer. He lives in DC. He's got 2 90-minute solo shows, or at least 2. One is called Flirting Like an American. Pretty sure I could have written that one myself, sorry. And From Russia Without Love. Critically acclaimed, his stories are often based on personal experience as a first-generation immigrant and a university professor, which might be, in his words, funnier than you'd expect. We shall see in a moment. Please welcome to the Zoom stage, and I hope I get this right, Sufian Zhemukhov.
Thank you. So one evening in 2001, I found myself alone at home thinking, I enjoy being alone. I'm a self-sufficient introvert, and I felt happy. Then I thought, who am I kidding? I don't really enjoy being alone. I'm just uncomfortable around people. And I felt unhappy. Back then, my mood often switched from euphoria to depression. I published my first book before turning 30 years old, and I was extremely happy for a week. Everyone must admire me, I thought. I am the youngest author in the history of our Department of History. But then I fell into depression. Who cares if I published a book? I have the smallest salary in the history of the Department of History. And my department chair, Boris, hates me. And it always made me extremely unhappy when somebody hated or disliked me. That was when I came up with the idea of my self-research project that I titled The Study of Dislikable Me. I created a table with 5 columns where I listed all people I knew and some animals according to how they made me feel. I called the first column True Love and put there only one name, Eli, which was the name of my girlfriend's dog. Eli was the only creature in the world that made me feel unconditionally happy. Then I titled the last column Enemies and also put there one name, Boris, my department chair, a man with ugly wrinkled face. Boris made me so unhappy that I thought, I can't believe that God created Boris in his own image. What a wonderful world it would be with fewer Borises and more Elis in it. So I started my research with Eli, a cute white kakapo. Every time I visited my girlfriend, Eli would run toward me wiggling his fluffy tail. And it made me happy that someone was so excited to see me at my girlfriend's apartment. A couple of minutes later, however, Eli would lose his interest in me and indifferently walk away. His attitude changed so abruptly that I always wondered, did I do something wrong? So trying to understand Eli's behavior, I recalled how as a child, I also used to get excited when my parents had guests because I expected that guests should bring me presents. And I always got disappointed when they didn't. That explains Eli's behavior, I thought. I never remember bringing him treats. He probably thinks, you moron, would it hurt you to bring me a treat? That's how I discovered the root of my problem. I was putting thoughts into the dog's head. Well, there would be no way for me to know what the dog was thinking. More importantly, I realized putting judgmental thoughts into Eli's head, I make myself unhappy. I applied my discovery to everyone in the table, starting with the second column titled Lovables, where I listed my best friends, my parents, and my girlfriend. So one by one, I analyzed how I was putting judgmental thoughts into people's heads around me. And I suspected that the more they thought about me, the more they disliked me. That was really a humbling research. And at the end, I thought, who do I think I am for a whole spreadsheet of people and animals constantly to think about me and judge me? So finally, I approached the last fifth column with Boris, the evil wrinkled man. I had learned about his hostility thanks to an older colleague of mine, Yuri, who was Boris's rival for the department chair position. And Yuri once told me kind of arrogantly, I want to warn you, young man, that our department chair is making unflattering comments behind your back. And I said, I knew it. Boris is probably plotting to fire me. I suspected that Yuri, my older colleague, was not my biggest fan either. That's why I put him in the fourth column that I titled Ill Wishers, together with half a dozen others. Only during my study of Dislikable Me, I couldn't find any evidence proving that my older colleague Yuri cared negatively or positively about me. So I moved him from Ill Wishers to the third column that I titled Indifference. Then, while reviewing the case of Boris in my last column, Enemies, I also established the same thing, that I never personally heard Boris saying anything against me. And I decided to move him from Enemies to Ill Wishers, from fifth column to the fourth column, until I find evidence of his hostility. Instead of finding evidence of his hostility, however, next time I ran into Boris at work, I surprised myself by saying, hi. And Boris surprised me by replying, we need to talk about your promotion because you've published a book. And standing for the first time so close to Boris, I observed his wrinkles actually make him look wiser and kinder. I'm still not sure how that happened. I have two theories. So my self-flattering explanation is that my research made me friendlier and caused Boris subconsciously to like me. And my unflattering explanation is that I only imagined Boris being evil and ugly, while in reality, he always stayed friendly and handsome. So my study of Dislikable Me at the end actually had a practical outcome. I stopped having depression. And since then, more and more enjoyed being around people. And I never again forgot to bring treats for Eli as kind of a thank you for helping me to discover the root of my depression. And sometimes I even brought treats to Boris and Yuri.
Boom. Thank you, Sufian. Yeah. Sufian, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sure.
Good, good. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, thank you for listening.
Yeah. As you were sharing your story, I was wondering, is he using Excel or Google Sheets? That's I was listening to everything. It was a wonderful story. I just had this imagining the spreadsheet in front of you, trying to figure out how to put every column and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just finished my book and didn't have any research to do. So I thought I have this method of research.
Yeah.
So why don't I use it?
Are you doing, I know I mentioned 2 one-person shows. Is there one you're doing now? Or like it's sort of in the works? I know with the whole COVID thing, but
Yeah, actually, I performed these shows at Washington, D.C. Fringe Festival and
okay.
at the Rochester, New York Festival, and like outside of festivals. And I have an upcoming new show, From Russia Without Love. And I have a premiere earlier in December of a completely new show that I titled A Magic Boy, a Soviet boy with magic powers.
3
So
solo shows.
that will be the third one, yes.
Wow. All right, you're active, you're involved, you're writing, you're acting. Great. Well, I appreciate you joining us this evening and sharing that story, Sufian. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting, Sean.
Absolutely. Guy, I know in the water and in the air in Massachusetts, they make good storytellers. I think they also make patient people because he's been patient. Again, like another gentleman this evening in the Massachusetts area, brief intro. We're just going to dive right in. He's a teacher, he's a writer, obviously a storyteller, and a runner. He lives in East Hampton, Mass, which should be noted for those of you that don't know, that is not in the Boston area, that is way west. Please welcome our final storyteller this evening, Andrew Shelffo. Andrew, let me spotlight you, sir. Boom. Whenever you're ready, sir. Thanks. Stage is
Awesome.
yours.
Thank you, Sean. I'm sitting in the exam room at the orthopedist's office, and I'm waiting for him to come in and tell me what he's seen on the x-rays that he's just taken. And I'm growing anxious because it's taking longer than I thought it would, and because my knee really hurts, and because I'm worried that he's going to come in and tell me that I need to give up running. When he was in before and he took my health history, things went okay. Like overall, I'm a pretty healthy guy, but when you get into kind of the orthopedic stuff, not so good. When I was a kid, when I was a really young kid, I was the fastest kid in my neighborhood, and I loved running. And then when I was a teenager, over the span of 3 years, I had 4 knee surgeries, and 2 of those surgeries were what they call politely reconstructive surgeries on my knee, because my knee went one way and I went another way in a touch football game. So I didn't really do much running after that, but I missed it. And I got back into running in my late 30s, and it wasn't easy. I mean, the first time I went out for a run, I couldn't even make it 1 lap around the track at the local college before I had to stop. But it turns out that the biggest obstacle to my getting back into running wasn't my knees, and it wasn't my conditioning. My then wife, when I was getting into running, she told me, "Why are you doing that? Running is stupid, and running is dumb, and it's selfish." And I agreed with her because it was easier than disagreeing with her. And I also agreed with her because if you think about it, running is kind of stupid. Like, you go out the door, you run around, and you come back, right? You finish right where you started. So you never really get anywhere. And an absurd number of people who are regular runners get injured every year. So it's not as healthy as you might think it is. And the other reason that I didn't disagree with her was because I didn't think at that point in my life that anything I did was important, or anything I did was valuable. And if I'm feeling that everything I do is insignificant, then by definition, everything I do can be deemed stupid. But I stuck with it. And to avoid conflict, I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And if it wasn't light out enough by then, I would write until it was light enough. And then I'd go outside and I would run, and I would be sure to come back home before anybody got up, because I didn't want to be accused of being selfish. I didn't really realize it at the time, but I was using running as an escape. But it wasn't so much an escape from my marriage as it was an attempt to escape from myself, because I felt worthless. I honestly believed that if I disappeared, that nobody would care. I was clinically depressed, but I didn't know it. The only thing I knew was that running made me feel better. I began to see a therapist. And in one of my sessions with the therapist, I told him about something that I had written during one of those early morning writing sessions. And this was my 40-year plan. And basically my plan was that every day I would get up, I would go to work, I would come home, deal with whatever domestic issues there were to deal with. I would not find joy in anything that I did, but it would be okay because all I would have to do would be to sweat it out for 40 years. And then if I was lucky, by the time the 40 years were up, I would be dead. That was my plan. And running was a good way to fill the time while I waited for that 40-year plan to expire. But along the way, I also signed up for a local charity 5K. And I crossed the finish line and I saw my name on a list of finishers with a time next to it. And they gave me a t-shirt. And I walked away and I thought to myself, I'm someone, I'm important. And that felt pretty good. A few days before I saw the orthopedist, I was out running and I fell. I don't really know what happened. I was going fine 1 second, and then the next second I was down on the ground and my knee hurt. I spent the first day trying to ignore the pain. On the second day, I went to the grocery store and I had to use one of those motorized carts to get around. On the third day, I gave in and I made an appointment to see the doctor. Now, I know that running isn't easy. And by the time I limped into the orthopedist's office, I had been a serious runner for like 10 years. And in that time, I'd had some common minor aches and pains because that happens. This was the first serious fall that I had had. And in that 10 years that I had been running, like my sister took up running at one point and she asked me, she said, "Hey, when does running stop sucking?" And I laughed and I said, "I don't know, Joan. When it happens to me, I will give you a call." Every morning, the debate is the same with me. Do I go out the door and go running, or do I roll over and go back to sleep? Now that my depression is in a little bit more control, the answer most of the times is I'm going to be going out the door. Plus, I have someone in my life who's much more supportive with running, and she won't let me roll over as much as I might want to. And that's one of the reasons why we're going to be getting married in the summer. My sister also asked me what I think about when I'm running all those miles. And I told her, I don't really think about much. And that's a lie. I think all the time. And really, it's not really thinking. More what I do is I worry. I worry about everything. I worry about dehydration. I worry about rolling an ankle. I worry about getting passed by elementary kids on the track. I worry about looking like an idiot. I worry about falling. I worry about getting hurt. I worry about running and having a tree branch fall on me because I read about somebody that happened to about a week or so ago. I worry about having a heart attack while I run because Jim Fix, the person who's responsible for the modern running boom in this country, he died from a heart attack while he was running. You may have seen in the news last week or so that there was a runner in Colorado who was stalked by a cougar for like a mile while he was out running. And you might think to yourself, hey, Andrew, why don't you put that on your list of things to worry about? I'm way ahead of you. I've had cougars on my list for like years. And that's even though one of my closest friends is the guy who, when he worked for Fish and Wildlife, certified that there are no cougars that live in my state. I also worry about my loved ones. I run to keep them safe. I know deep down inside that if I don't run, something bad will happen to them. I have to run. I don't run now to escape anything. I run to prove to myself that I can carry on my shoulders everything that I need to carry, and I can still run. Running is my way of saying to the universe, fuck you, you can't catch me. But now as I sit there in the exam room waiting for the doctor, I worry that these worries are going to catch up with me. The doctor comes back in and he's carrying a plastic model of the knee. And one thing I've learned over the years is that when the doctor comes in the exam room carrying a model of something, it's generally not a good sign. He starts off with some good news and he says, there's nothing torn or broken. But then he starts talking about cartilage, and he starts talking about arthritis, and he starts talking about the way that the patella is supposed to track in the knee joint. And then he talks about knee replacement surgery. But then he says, that's not imminent for you. Your knees are in bad shape. That's true. But as long as you don't do anything stupid, you'll be okay. And I said, what about running? And he nodded. He said, you better buy a bike. If you keep running, bad things are going to happen. And I looked at him and I said, if I don't keep running, bad things are going to happen. And I limped out of the exam room and I went home and I continued to heal. I kept running because I have to. But I realize now that it's real. I can't run forever. There's a finish line in my future and I don't want to cross it because I want to stay in the race for as long as I can, because now I truly believe that I'm worth it. Thank you.
Boom. Andrew, thank you, sir. Great way to cap it off. We're gonna get to say hello to this partner that you mentioned real quick. Say hello.
She's coming. She's working her way over.
All right. We always want to see a quick hello and smile from the level. There she is. Supporting you running.
Absolutely.
We're all aging. Yeah, great job. I put in the chat, by the way, a bunch of stuff. So if people want to send $1,000 or check out a future event or listen to the podcast, all that stuff's there. Thank you for that story, Andrew. And what are you drinking?
A little of Whole Foods finest cheap white wine.
I do that too a lot. I get like the boxed wine.
Exactly. Yes. Well, it comes in a box. It's in a bottle, but $3 a bottle.
Whatever. Mine's not. Mine's in a box. Shitty little box. And I, no shame. I don't give a shit. So formally sort of thank everybody, obviously including our 7 stellar tellers for crafting their stories, sharing their stories with such a bravery. But also, I don't know if my mic is probably too far from you, so you can't hear me. But thank you to our audience for sticking around and listening. And you were all so well behaved. So thank you for that. We don't have this thing. I don't have any fancy production stuff. So there's no music. There's no like fake applause. It's just me saying great job and thanks to our audience. And to the audience and to our tellers, unmute yourself. Let's have like a 2 minutes of frenzy chaos of people saying, oh my God, you're amazing. And then we'll settle into a Q&A.